And so we started to do a bit of movement and sort of did some omming together, and then lay down 10 minutes later to go into the holotropic breath work. And I'm fucking stoned at this point, like I'm very high. And then going into this deep breath, within 20 minutes, dude, I was crying with laughter. Like I have never laughed before. Like I was a child. Like the kind of laughter where you're trying to breathe again, like because your belly hurts and the tears are rolling down, and gravity doesn't exist, and I'm just blissing out with Santa Maria, and then it occurs to me, like that's the power of the medicine, that's the power of cannabis, that's the power of Santa Maria, and it just gave me a whole reset for and a reverence for this sacred plant medicine. It's like, fuck, it's not just weed. It's so much more than that. And that really helped. That was a big catalyst for like changing my relationship with marijuana. And now when I do smoke, I make more of a ceremony out of it. Like you wouldn't just chow mushrooms or drink ayahuasca or
feeling good.
Feeling energized.
Yeah. So something that I've found to be true for myself is there's definitely no such thing as coincidences. Hey, right? So I was thinking about, even how we formed this connection, how I met you, and it was actually through Tara. And she was telling me about how she first met you at a random cold swim, I think in Camps Bay somewhere.
Yeah, Saunders Rock in Bantry Bay.
Yeah. And she met you there, and then that could maybe pass as a coincidence. And then she met you at a festival. Unfortunately, I was so bummed I couldn't be at.
Me too.
I was working, but she said she had such cool conversations with you, and you guys were literally camping next to each other. She came home and she was like, "You got to meet Ben. He's such a cool guy." And I didn't really think much of it because I was like, I'm pretty sure I'll never meet Ben. But then we walked past you in the street, in Scarborough.
Yeah.
And
randomly.
Randomly. Yeah, man. So I was just like, when you start paying attention to the signs out there and just random connections, interactions, you start realizing that everything happens for a reason. Well, that's what I found to be true. So,
and how beautiful is that?
Yeah.
Just to have that trust that, everything is unfolding in perfection.
Yeah.
Like, even if I can't see it all of the time.
Yes.
And those little synchronicities, certainly I believe that they're happening all the time, all around us. It's just how present are we to them?
Yeah.
How many of them can we notice? And I find, for me, the more I notice, the more there's this feeling that rises up in me, I'm actually a small part of a much bigger picture that's just unfolding, and it almost doesn't matter what I do to a certain degree. It's going to be happening anyway. So I either join in with the story that's unfolding, or I just be coincidence.
Yeah. That's so beautifully put.
I choose the magic every time. It's the magic.
I choose the magic all the time now, and it's quite comforting as well, because when you realize when things aren't going your way or the way you want it to go, there's a reason for it, and then pay attention to it. And okay, what's the lesson there? What is it just trying to show me?
Yeah.
And then you realize there is a bigger thing unfolding, and it's just a happening. It's all just a happening.
Yeah, the big happening. The big mystery.
Yeah, the big mystery, the mystery that drives us forward. So thank you, first of all, for taking the time to be here today. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I love hearing people's stories, because I feel like everybody has something just by their story, something to share that somebody else can take away. And in the spirit of that, I would love to start off with potentially, you were telling me about the last time you came over, you started with the rowing or the kayaking. You were professional at that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can kickstart off with there, a little bit about your background,
okay, cool.
And how that mindset transitioned into your kind of life that you're living now. For people, for the random few that actually don't know you.
Okay, cool. So I grew up in the UK, in a part of the UK called Surrey, which is like the home counties. And it's on the River Thames, just outside London. And yeah, I at the age of 8 years old, I started kayaking. And then I joined a kayak club, and it just happened to be one of the best, most world-class racing clubs in the world, Elmbridge Canoe Club. And I just got obsessed with it. And I love being on the water. I'm much like you. We love being in or on the water. And like, so to be in a kayak on the river every day was kept me sane. And it was like, I didn't realize it. I didn't have the awareness at the time of what was really going on, but that was what was really helping me through all sorts of things in my life. And that was like the most consistent thing that I could come back to. And I got quite good at it. And I enjoyed being good at it, as with all these things. If you're good at something, like, it's a bit more fun, especially in a sport where it's like competitive and it's measurable, and progress is measurable. So it's like something I could focus on, and a really positive channel for my energy. I have a lot of energy. Like, I think a lot of us have, especially when we're kids, we get so much energy coming through. And if I could have very easily been one of the very naughty kids that was just like wreaking havoc in my local community if it wasn't for directing that energy into a sport. So I look back on that now, I'm like, whoa, that was such a win for me to get obsessed with that. And by the time I was 15, I was training twice a day, most days, and I was on the British team, junior team. And I'm not the biggest dude, and kayaking is one of those things where if you're a bit bigger, it kind of helps. It is power to weight, kind of, but big dudes and bigger women do well. Like, it's a strength sport.
Sure.
So I had to finesse my way to speed. I had to finesse my way to the top a little bit. So I had to focus on like technique, much like swimming, without going and doing a whole podcast about kayaking technique. Like with swimming, you're using the paddle as your hand, and you're grabbing a piece of water and you're like moving yourself past it, as opposed to like scooping it. And so there's loads of like little finessey technique bits, and I loved that. And I had to love it because in order to keep up with the big guys, I had to be more efficient. And I also had to outsmart them. Okay.
So all of a sudden the small things become that much more important.
Yes. Tiny little adjustments to technique. Anybody who's been a swimmer or like where you have to drill that technique, it's distance per stroke. And so I loved that, and I loved being able to beat people who are faster than me at marathon racing, because it's very tactical and you get to move around a group, and a bit like cycling where you can slipstream. With kayaking, you can sort of ride the wake that comes off of someone's boat and save a bit of energy, and there's loads of tactics with moving around in marathon racing like that. So I loved that, and I got really good at marathon racing, and I won the Junior Marathon World Championships and in 2003, and then it took me 7 years to get my next goal, which was to win the Senior Marathon World Championships in 2010. Sure. And yeah, I had a great time. Almost went to Beijing, got very, very close. And that was therapy for me in the early years, being on the water. Like, I'm Pisces, and to be in or on the water is like home for me.
Scarborough is so beautiful.
Dude.
Right.
And Cape Town generally, just surrounded by ocean and waterfalls and just nature generally. So that was my sort of childhood growing up. But it also gave me the travel bug, because when I was 15, I was like being taken away to Europe with the team to go and race other people, and then I started making friends around Europe, and then sometimes I'd be racing those people from Belgium, people from Denmark, Norway. I'd make friends with them, and then we'd race each other in all the age categories growing up into senior, and so become quite good friends. And then we'd go away on training camps together, basically a holiday where we'd just go and like beast each other at training for like 2 weeks. It was really fun, and I really appreciate that, being sort of directed into a sport like that when I was younger. But then I realized, there's a lot of traveling to be done. And every time I go somewhere to go race, I'm so focused on the race, it's almost like going there for work. Like I don't get to really experience the place that I'm going to because I'm so focused on my mission. And then I knew that as soon as I stopped kayaking, I'm going to travel the world somehow and just explore this planet. So I guess I was actually one of the Kickstarters of the original GoPro when it came out. This is kind of like how I got into film.
Okay.
And I had already started taking photos. I enjoyed taking photos, but I was like, how can I film my kayaking races? And so this GoPro came out, and I was like, stick it on the back of my boat, and then I can film the whole thing. Did that, made some fun films, really enjoyed the editing process, and that became my creative outlet as well as photography. So I do that for fun. Never really thinking I want to do this as a career or a job one day. At the time, it was actually fun, and also I'd stick my sponsors' logos at the beginning of the films, my little kayaking mission films, and then they'd send me more gear, and I'd be like, okay, so I'm kind of marketing myself before that was all actually my career.
Yeah.
And then one day, someone that I looked up to really highly was like, your films are actually pretty good. Like, have you considered like doing that as a career? I was like, fuck. I was looking for something outside of kayak because there's no money in kayaking.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's not a very popular sport. People think it's rowing, and it's the only place in rowing that I'd have is probably like the little cox that steers the boat. In those, I'm not tall enough to be a rower, so I was like, okay, how do I make money? Film looks like a good opportunity to do that. Started doing that. Then I somehow got on the YouTube train really early.
Okay.
I started making daily videos when there was only about 15, 20 people in the whole world making daily videos.
Sure.
And everybody who was a YouTuber back then, the daily vloggers, as we were known, making our YouTube vlogs, we were like, people didn't understand us. We were like a strange breed. Like most people are struggling to make one video a week, and we're making one every single day. And people are like, what the fuck, dude? Like, how do you even do that? But it was actually quite easy because you don't struggle with the story. The story starts in the morning, and then it goes throughout the day, and then it ends at night. And whatever you do during the day is the story. And it doesn't have to be perfect, as long as you just keep getting them out. And so that was my ticket to growing my subscriber count on YouTube up to like 700k plus. And within 6 months I was like making money from YouTube, and I was getting brand deals and sponsorship opportunities, and starting to create and amass a bit of a community online. And then I directed them to Instagram back in the day when you couldn't even upload your own photos. You had to take the photo in Instagram. It was like early days Instagram. Really? I've seen all of the progressions of Instagram, and had to try and work with them all as well. Okay. This is a long story.
No, this is awesome. What I like is it's the same to some degree. I was thinking of like Joe Rogan as the podcaster back in the day when he started doing these long form conversations. People were like, what are you doing? And now but he was at that early stage doing his thing, and it proved to be a really great thing to do. Yeah,
he just did it because it felt good for him. It's like, why would I interrupt people or edit this or cut this down? Or I'm also a big fan of the long form content. Yeah. I'm a big fan of podcasts as well. Generally, I feel like, and maybe whoever's watching or listening to this, you might feel like you're joining in with a conversation or just overhearing a conversation. I think that's really can be quite therapeutic in a way. Yeah, especially with the kinds of conversations we want to have on our podcast now, which are a little bit deeper. Yes. And at a time now when I think a lot of people are doing a bit of inner work and like beginning their inner journey and their healing journey. They're asking like deep and meaningful questions like, why am I here? Like, what does it mean to be a human?
What is the point of this?
Like, somebody please explain why there's so much suffering, That certainly was my entry. And I think it's a lot of people's entry for doing the inner work. And so it's exponentially valuable to humanity to speak to these things, even if we don't really know what's going on, but we can speak to our own experiences about awakening and all of these things.
I really want to, actually segue into that. And as somebody who's, rode that wave of the online presence and whatnot, only recently actually getting to know who you are and seeing what you posted about, and what I like is the authenticity of it. And I think people are craving authenticity. There's a lot of kind of fluff out there, and it's great, but people are craving real shit. And it's nice, it's great to see people like you posting real shit, things that people don't really want to have conversations about. And on the kind of subject of awakening, I know it's kind of a cliche word these days in the whole spiritual community, but it is a real thing. And I know we touched on a little bit of the back end suffering that you had, and I think people perceive somebody like you who has an online presence and living this life that obviously is seen through videos and photos and whatnot, but there's obviously a back end to that, and you have your own suffering in your own way, and people are, I suppose, don't understand that and all. But
and they don't often see it either, because why would you put that on YouTube? It's why would you put that out there? And certainly the paradigm around mental health has been, and certainly I used to judge people who spoke out about their anxiety and their depression, and like, why are you putting this out here? Like, I was kind of going along with everybody else's idea, the unempathetic, the judgmental, you must just be doing it for attention. And little did I know, like, I'm suffering from my own mental health struggles, but I didn't have awareness of it at the time. I was so busy distracting myself with creating this like mad life of, but also it's not popular. People don't. It's becoming more and more popular now as a necessity. Like, people need this kind of authentic content. But it was really easy for me to, and I'm not saying like every single vlog that I made I chucked on this fake persona of positivity. I was genuinely so stoked with my life, and I couldn't believe how everything was unfolding. And so it was really genuinely coming through. But there's only so long you can kind of just ride that high.
There's always the opposite.
You can't. And also, like, you can try ride it, but it becomes meaningless after a while if you don't have the other end of the spectrum, the experience of like the lows. But the positivity and the high energy and the inspiring content also pays. Like, it pays because you get views, you get lots of positive feedback and positive reflections, and almost like in a positive feedback loop. It's like, keep going, we need you. And so you're like, okay. And then the brands keep coming, and certainly my experience over the last 3 or 4 years, as I've spoken to deeper aspects of my human experience. I used to work with like Audi and Sony and Canon, and they're not interested in working with people who are like not creating popular stuff, and that's totally understandable. And now it's on me to discover new revenue streams. And
do you get to that point in your kind of career where you have to kind of go one way or the other? You can't keep everybody happy, and I suppose you can get lost in it if you're trying to keep everybody happy. That's it must be quite a thing to navigate that world on that level, I suppose. And like, I think you were mentioning to me that when you posted it, you were actually struggling. You got some kind of negative feedback, like, how can you be, and trying to detach from what other people's perspectives are of you, because that's their perspective, it's not yours. But not getting caught in that must be quite. But what was there a catalyst? Was there like an inflection point that kind of gave you the awakening to, or was in like? Yeah,
it was. There's a couple of points I want to speak to on that. Firstly is like the people pleaser. Like, I think a lot of us, myself, certainly, I grew up thinking that other people's experiences are my responsibility when I'm around. So if someone was not happy, I'd feel into that happiness because I have like deep feeling capacity and deep empathy. Like, I can feel the room out, and that's not always healthy. And I've certainly had to learn to like rein that in and learn like what's my feelings and what's someone else, because I'll literally just pick up and start absorbing other people's feelings. And that's a skill that I'd honed as when I was younger. I could feel into how someone else is feeling, so that I could check in if they were having a good time energetically, and if they weren't, then take it on as my responsibility to make them feel better. Because I thought we can go a bit deeper with this, in that I hadn't developed my own sense of self. And so I was externalizing my sense of self and understanding myself through everybody else's experience of me.
Yeah.
And so if people didn't like me, I must be a bad person. I need to change this, and I will change myself to please you, to keep you happy, because I only know myself through you. And I didn't have that sense of separation from other people. And yeah, I think, and anybody listening to this right now is like, oh fuck, actually, yeah, I can kind of relate to that. Like, I'm a bit of a people pleaser as well. It's hard work.
It's fucking hard work.
It's so hard work, because you can't please everybody. Trust me, I've fucking tried pleasing an audience of hundreds of thousands of people online.
Cheapers, it must be,
It's futile.
Yeah. I grew up a compulsive people pleaser. My dad's been a compulsive people pleaser, and seeing how that can become such a negative thing. And I really let people just run all over me eventually, because I was that bad at just trying to please everybody. And recognizing that, okay, is one thing, but then to start to try and change is another thing, and trying to really set your own boundaries and do your own inner work and own healing and all kinds of things where you, like you said, discover your own sense of self and not have it through other people.
And you asked me just now, like, what was the catalyst for that change? And the catalyst was like, I'd had a fucking enough. Like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I've got no more energy left. I don't know who I am. And I'm so confused, because some people that I thought were like really close besties are now actually making me cry on the regular, and I don't feel like they understand who I am, and how can they understand if I don't know who I am? Do I even want to be doing what I'm doing anymore? Am I even happy? And you start asking these questions, and all of these questions that were kind of coming up in my subconscious for multiple years, maybe 2 or 3 years, I just pushed them to one side. I was like, I do not want to deal with that. But then it all just built up over time. And it all just came out.
Sure.
And the dam breaks after a while, and the catalyst for the crack in the dam was coming off of my motorcycle. I had a motorcycle
life
accident.
was like...
Yeah, the universe was like, this is the wrong path, bro. This is the right path, but this is where it ends, and this is where you take a hard left. And yeah, I was very lucky to come off my motorcycle. I look back and I'm super grateful for that. And I see that as a catalyst for huge change. And I was also super lucky because I wasn't going fast at the time. I was tearing around Cape Town on my super loud KTM, and like wearing only a t-shirt, thinking I was the fucking coolest dude ever, just wearing gloves and a helmet, and pulling little wheelies and getting really bit overconfident.
So motorcycle accident. Okay.
So I was coming around a corner, giving it beans, leaning over, and back wheel caught, and I got high-sided myself over the handlebars, landed on my left elbow, and fractured the whole thing, like put it into many bits. And because of my kayaking career, I avoided pretty much all dangerous activities most of the time, because I couldn't afford to get injured. If you get injured, the season's over, which means you've wasted almost like a whole winter's training. And all of that commitment of showing up every single day, So I avoided danger most of the time, and also avoided all drugs, and was very judgmental around anybody who like smoked weed or like did it. I was like, throwing your life away, bro, fucking useless. Just why aren't you being a useful member of society, fucking druggo? And So there was that judgmental
yeah.
athlete Ben, you know.
Okay.
So anyway, motorcycle accident. This is the first time I'd ever broken a bone. I was like 31, 32.
Oh, wow.
Never broken a bone in my life, never had surgery in my life, never been under anesthesia before.
Yeah.
And suddenly all of this is happening. And it was really interesting timing with my partner at the time and our besties in the UK. We were going to go to Canada and work for the tourism board there with our own budget this time. We weren't working for another company. We were like, we're going to make the itinerary, you're going to give us the whole budget, and we're going to create our own 2-week holiday and get paid to like do all our social media stuff, and it was all lined up. Of course, I sent the email saying, I don't think I can do snowboarding with a broken arm. And they got back saying, well, if Ben can't go, nobody can go. Because I had the biggest numbers. I was bringing the biggest numbers. So the whole trip got cancelled. There was a lot of disappointment. And I was like, it's kind of strange that you guys are disappointed about this. Like, I broke my arm. Like, it's a bit of a strange thing. I was a little bit like brokenhearted from that. And the whole thing was just, it felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. Like I left my relationship as well of 6 years, and that was hard. But I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know even like I didn't have any emotional intelligence. I didn't know how I was feeling. Didn't know how to speak to how I was feeling. A whole bunch of things in my life I just kind of ran away from. Because I was just pulling the emergency cord at this stage. I had no idea what I was doing. And so it was very tumultuous. And then, of course, I'm in recovery from surgery, and I've never sat still and just been with my own thoughts and my own feelings for a period of time like that when I've been so low. And it was hell. I went through like 3 months of... a solid 3 months of like wondering whether I even wanted to be here anymore. And I never got close to like actually taking action on ending my life. But I lost count of the amount of days where I'd just be on the kitchen floor just wondering if I was going to have the energy to even go to the shops and buy food. So I'm not going to be able to feed myself. So how can I... And I'd also gone into massive debt as well, because I tried to launch a production company at the same time. Okay. And that just fucked out completely. Okay. And so the whole world came down on top of me. And that's when I started asking the big questions, like, what the fuck? Why? This is not how it was meant to go. Like, this is not what they promised me. Like, this is not...
It was not the path that was planned.
This is not the path that I was told would bring me happiness. I've done everything that's been asked of me, and I find myself in this position where I don't want to live anymore. What the fuck? So,
yeah, mental health is a real thing.
It's so real.
It's so real.
Yeah.
Sure.
And of course, I was resisting it and being like, no, it's got nothing to do with me. And I look back and I'm like,
wasn't my fault. But,
and to speak a bit more to mental health, I did travel the world through my vlogging and through my YouTube, and I worked with many different tourism boards where I literally got paid to post Instagram. I was living my dream life.
I think that's a lot of people's dream life.
And why not? Like, what's better than that?
To travel and create and getting to create every day, like you said,
in that dream chapter of my life, if someone had asked me, what does gratitude mean to you, I wouldn't know how to answer that. I wasn't interested in that. All I was interested in was like getting the shot. Like I was competitive, so I brought my competitive nature from my kayaking days. I was like, okay, I'm world champion at kayaking. I can be world champion at vlogging as well. And of course, there's no fucking finish line with art and creative expression. And if you create, and if you get competitive around creativity, it's going to end badly and weirdly anyway.
Yeah, because you lose the essence of it with why you're doing it. Because you're trying then to reach a goal, and you're trying to make something finite that is...
You're making something, but where's it coming from? Like, is it coming from because you want to express... an art is like an expression of the self. It's an expression of an experience or an emotion or something that's... You're making the untangible tangible for someone and yourself. And the process of it is a journey in itself. But when I'm making content, firstly, to please an audience, and secondly, to make money, and on a deeper level that I discovered a bit later, to affirm my own identity, as I had like this codependent relationship with my audience where I'd make a video and they'd say, we love it, and I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm worthy. Like, I'm worthy of all the good things in my life. I'm worthy of this mad experience, earning more money than I ever thought I was going to earn. But only when I keep making the videos. And as soon as I stop making the videos, people are like, where's the videos? And I'm like, fuck, actually, you're right. Maybe I don't deserve any of this unless I'm making videos. Okay. And so it really...
Kind of like an abusive relationship.
It was kind of like an abusive relationship.
Because it's codependent. Yeah, okay, that's so interesting.
And not to place the blame on anybody else.
Yeah.
I invited all of this in subconsciously to learn from it. And I look back on it now and I'm just grateful for all of the experiences, and I had to move through them all. And I learned so much from it, and now I can take that and speak to it and maybe help other people feel like they're seen and heard in their own experience too. And maybe they can apply some of the lessons that I've learned to their life as well, and just say like, look, it's not just a YouTube audience, it can be a relationship or a friendship group where we feel like we're not worthy of being recognized by them, or not worthy of being loved by those people unless I achieve something or I create something that I can bring to them. And of course, all of this has taught me in the end that like we are all worthy of abundance in terms of, well, whatever abundance means to you, be it like financial or just love and appreciation from other people and respect from other people, just because you exist, just for being here. You don't have to do anything. That's unconditional love. That's like pure love. That's untainted. And that to me is like true. That's truth to me. It's like, I love you, Darren, because you exist. And that's it. And aside from the fact that it's fucking brave for you to be here during this time.
We've got into a crazy time.
With awareness of yourself. Like, are you crazy? Who knows? But it's a challenge, right? So how can I put limitations? I'm limiting how much love I can give you if you only deserve it if you've done this, this, and this for me. Or I'll only have you on my podcast if you've got 100,000 subscribers or whatever. And so there's lessons in all of that. But the main one for me is like, I deserve love from myself, firstly, and because I wasn't giving myself love, because I was waiting for other people to tell me that I deserved it. I put a nice new film out for people. I made these travel films called Visual Vibes, and they used to go down really well. A few of them have got like over 1 million views. And I'd just get flooded with feedback, and I'd just feel so loved, and I'd feel like, it's like I can rest now. I can rest, and I can, but for like 2 days I'd rest. And I'd swim in that feeling of, I wouldn't even swim. I'd dip a toe in the feeling of receiving recognition and respect from other people. I wouldn't dive right in because I hadn't learnt yet how to actually receive love and feedback from people, because I was holding this like humble, don't receive, like you're never going to be good enough, got to keep achieving kind of energy. And so it's there's a lot there.
That's interesting. That's so interesting. Going back to the creative side, I think it must be quite a challenge, because from what I find to be true is, with anything creative, the beauty in it is the being able to be in that flow state and getting into
it's
that
the doing it bit. That's
it's the doing, and it's the being in that state where you notice the synchronicities and you're really present. But then, I suppose, like you said, when you get a bit too competitive and you're trying to then do something, you're not in the flow anymore, then you're forcing it. And that's where you kind of lose the magic.
Yeah, you're trying to control the outcome of it. Yeah,
yes.
rather than just allow it to unfold from you.
Yeah, for sure. That's super interesting. And then, regarding the unconditional love, I think for me it's been a journey as well, trying to only with literally in the last year of really delving deep with a lot of plant medicine and trying to heal my own shit. Really understanding what it means to love yourself. And stop.
Like, what does that even mean to you?
What does it even mean? Yeah, stop being hard on yourself and in every form and every thought, and the more what I found to be true, the more that I love myself, that's all that matters, because then everybody else mirrors that back at you, because you are then. It all starts with you. That's what I realized. You expect all these things from other people, but it's all in reverse.
You set the bar.
You set the bar.
Yeah. Boundaries.
100%.
Yeah, you make it very clear energetically, and the way we speak or where we show up and how we treat ourselves, how people see us treating ourselves gives them permission to treat us how we treat ourselves, So if you love yourself and you have really strong boundaries and you know what you need and you are very quick to give yourself what you need, a practical example of that is like going to a social event, and all your friends are there, and maybe it's a bit of a party going down, and there's part of you that's like, I've got a thing tomorrow that I really want to be really focused for, and it's not going to be conducive to the best result if I have another beer and stay, and so. And there's always going to be friends that are like, you need friends that are going to be like, come on, stay, to pull you into things and to pull you out of a bit of a slump. Sometimes you need those people in your life, but those people also you need those people in your life. But when you say no, they go, okay, cool, man, see you tomorrow. I hope the thing goes really well, Yeah. But if you're rubber armed every single time, then what you're teaching those people is that you don't respect yourself and you don't respect your own choices, and you just don't have strong boundaries, and so that's how they'll treat you in return, all subconsciously. This is most people, this is all happening pre-awareness.
Exactly.
And so just to bring that kind of thing into your awareness, how do I if I'm not happy with the way people are treating me, I can it's really easy to victimize ourselves and point the finger and be like, this person did this to me. It's well, you let that person do that to you most of the time, right?
Yes.
Some things can't be helped, and I don't want to victim blame, but a lot of the time we put ourselves in situations that are uncomfortable, and we feel like, I deserve more than this, and rather than feeling guilty or feeling bad about that, you can say, okay, I put myself subconsciously into a situation where I can learn once again that I deserve more than this. But what does that look like? It might look like maybe giving a bit of space between me and a friendship group that are just going down a different path to me. I think a lot of people have come, myself included, really face to face with a lot of their addictions over the last year or two, right? Because we've all been going through the fucking ringer.
Jeepers,
and being locked in our houses, of course the addictions are going to come up. So if all addictions are to be checked out for sure, but you can have sort of more healthy ones like exercise. Some people just got fucking ripped during lockdown. And others just had sank 2 or 3 beers every single day, and after a while it's how many can you take a day off? Can you how's that feeling in your body? Is that sustainable? And if you're putting yourself in environments where maybe during your lockdown that had to happen, for me, smoking a lot of marijuana, marijuana is my vice, or has been. And I've been a daily user for a while, and I have to take periods off to actually be in my body, because I'll just be all up here, like in the ethereal realm, like barely feeling things. And that's one of my sort of coping mechanisms for, it's like a survival thing to dissociate. And I can do it through daydreaming as well. I just disappear off into a daydream so that I don't have to be here and feel everybody else's shit. And so during lockdown, I suppose a lot of people came face to face with what's real for them. Like, and they have to start setting their own boundaries and move through that journey in itself. But then when coming out of lockdown, maybe it's like, I don't want to drink quite as much as I used to, or I don't want to party quite as hard as I once did, or stay up quite as late, because I don't like that feeling anymore. And so then maybe there's friends of ours or social groups that they're like, fuck that, we're going to continue down the path of self-destruction in a certain sense, with no judgment whatsoever, because they're perfectly on their perfect path as well.
And they're learning their lessons.
And you're learning that it's might not necessarily be for you in this stage of your life. And setting those boundaries is hard, because then you start to disappoint people because you've changed. It's
it's a real thing.
And then people are like, I had this idea of who you were to me, and now you're changing, and now I used to know myself through you, and this this bond that we had over this substance, like smoking with your friends. And so if I'm taking a break from smoking, but all my friends are still smoking.
It's the same with drinking.
Same with culture, drinking. Same with cocaine. Same with like festival vibes. Like getting thick into the festivals, and it's like, okay, is that serving you? And know that if you're going to walk away from that or take a break from it because you feel like you need to, that's self-love. Like that's really loving yourself, choosing what you know you need instead of just doing the same thing where you know what the end result might be. But there's so much nuance to that, like having those kind of conversations with your friends or with your family or with your partner or and saying, look, we can still be friends, but not over a beer every time. You know?
No, that's spot on. I think definitely over the last year and a half, it's been like quite a collective dark night of the soul. Like shit. Like last year for me, I found myself unemployed from March till December. Wow. And I also had to really sit with myself, because everything I had known to be stable around me, my comfort zone, living the life, everything's like perfect, but not perfect. I was badly needed, and I had to sit with myself and go through all this shit and really reevaluate my whole fucking life. And it's I'm so grateful to have Tara, because she's been like a rock for me, to have a partner who can, the addictions come out in all kinds of forms. And you just got to check yourself, because anything can become a bit too much or a bit too much of a crutch or whatever, but they all have their place. And I mean, it's been a wild ride the last year for sure.
Dude.
But it's been, in hindsight, one of the best things to have happened, I think, to a lot of people, because through that, you're kind of born through the ashes, and then you're like, okay,
it's needed.
It's so needed. Like, what kind of life do you want to create for yourself? And then it's not about, like you say, it's not judgment. Everybody do your thing, but maybe that's not serving me anymore. Maybe that's not working out for me. I actually want to get to bed early these days, because I prioritize my sleep, because I feel better, I'm in a better space, so I track better.
You have more energy to do more things that you love.
Exactly. And I started this year with when we moved out to Scarborough, and this place has literally changed our life.
Same.
It's so amazing. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to enjoy my days every day, somehow, whether that's a walk, whether that's ocean swim, whether that's doing something to keep me in a positive emotional state. And prioritizing yourself, initially kind of seems a bit selfish, but it's the most unselfish thing you can do.
We're programmed and conditioned to
we're
be
so
like,
programmed.
Oh, that's selfish. Especially people pleasers, because we tend to attract narcissists. And the narcissist will very much make you feel very guilty for choosing yourself. And it's hard to walk away from those kind of toxic relationships, because there's deep, you've been in the psychedelic realm, so you know the power of words and the spell binding that goes on, and manipulation isn't that people are like, oh, why don't you just walk away from that? It's like, because you're caught in a fucking magic spell, like a dark magic spell with a wizard who's in his shadow. It's like a very powerful being. Narcissists are incredibly powerful wizards, and they're just in their dark, they're in their shadow. So it's not always so easy. But that's, I mean, what you're talking about there is choosing to do things and take action on the things that you know help you feel better, like going for a swim in the sea, going for a hike, getting up early, getting sleep. All of these things are like aspects of a self-care and self-love routine that keep you at a certain vibration. And you know that and it's not necessarily like I feel fucking great the whole time, although there is a lot of that. And it's certainly not to avoid the feelings of sadness. And I think the addiction with marijuana for me is like a numbing out and it takes me out of my body. I'm less embodied, and in the body is where all the feelings happen. In the body is where all the emotions happen. And I'm learning recently that I feel things fucking deeply. Like I'm here to feel. That's kind of like what I'm here to do, and I'm really starting to learn and accept that. And so it's no wonder that I get so addictive to being disembodied. But so when we're trying to like maintain a high vibrational lifestyle, it's not that we're in bliss and ecstasy the whole time, but more like just contentment. It's so underrated to just be consistently content with your life.
And then that allows you to be more present, and then like it all kind of spirals in the right direction, I find,
in the direction of presence.
And for me, I mean, just touching on the marijuana, I love smoking marijuana.
Same.
But I also had to realize I had to get kind of discernment, because for me, before I'll go for a walk, sometimes I'll smoke, and I just really just makes me feel so much more connected to nature, to myself, and I have these beautiful.
That's being embodied.
It is, and then I come home and I'm like, like I just had these insights. I was thinking about this, and I really wanted, and then it's such a beautiful tool. All these plant medicines are. But then sometimes if I'm going through a bad period, and I'm like maybe then using it because I don't want to face an issue, then I'm smoking. Then I'm using it the wrong way. So I like to like learn discernment, and Tara's help with that. But because they all are beautiful tools. I mean, the plants are one of the biggest life-changing things that I've integrated into my life. And
the discovery of plants,
they are on an intelligence that we can't even comprehend. It's like
we think we're so smart.
Smart. It's a real thing.
No, I appreciate you sharing your sharing vulnerably around your journey with marijuana, because I think I speak to a lot of guys, and it's a very similar story where it's like quite often now with marijuana, if I'm using it to escape, she'll let me know, and it won't be fun.
It kicks back.
It won't be fun. And I'll just sit there and I'll go even more into my head about the things I'm trying to run away from. And she's so intelligent that she's like, I'm not going to let you abuse me like this. And it is an abuse of the medicine, and it's a lack of respect for the medicine.
100%, so spot on.
I discovered that when I did a breathwork journey with a brother of mine, Jean. If you're interested in breathwork,
love it.
I know you're interested, but if the listeners you know Jean, do you?
No,
he's in Hout Bay in Cape Town.
I knew a guy, Mike, in Hout Bay. I did breathwork courses with him. I did 2 workshops with him. Life-changing. Holy shit.
If you're waiting for a sign to get into breathwork, this is the sign. Like, get into breath. Like, just understand it. Just be conscious with it. It's incredible. It's everything. It's life.
It is.
But Jean, he has a studio called Bodhi Breathwork in Hout Bay. Highly recommend it. I did a one-on-one journey with him for like a 2-hour breathwork journey. And I went to him and I was like, because when you do breath work like that, when you go deep, it really cracks you open and allows the deeper emotions that might not be accessible with just normal waking breath. The kind of ones that pop up after the most perfectly timed questions in a therapy session. You can just dive straight in with breath and see what comes up. and a lot of rage has come up in the number of all the different breathwork sessions. There's always some anger that comes up from within me. And so I'm going to Jean. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm like booked a one-on-one with him in Hout Bay. And he's like, so why are you, like, what are you here for? I was like, anger. I've got anger coming up. It's because, the red flag for me is wanting to smoke every day.
Okay.
And I see that. And then when I do smoke, I'm in pleasure mode. There's no off button for my pleasure.
Yeah.
And that's like, if you're familiar with the Jungian archetypes of the masculine, the lover is like, knows no bars with like the amount of pleasure. So it's like, I'll smoke, and then I'll scroll, and then I'll watch something, and then I'll just eat. And I'm not even taking a breath between eating. And that munchies is like, of course, it's just constant pleasure. Yeah. And so, okay, I need to bring some discipline in, and I think I'm doing this because I've got some unchecked emotions that want to come up. And he's like, interesting that you talk about your relationship with marijuana. He's like, if you're up for it, it would be cool to do sometime a breathwork and Santa Maria journey. And I was like, let's do it today, right now. So had a little couple of drags of this beautiful homegrown organic sativa, and immediately felt anxious because I was like, oh God, like firstly, I didn't come here to have a good time. I came here to like do the work, and get the anger shifted out of the way. Anyway, he's an incredible healer, Jean, and an incredible space holder. I felt super safe being around him and being my authentic, vulnerable self around him. And so we started to do a bit of movement and sort of did some omming together, and then lay down 10 minutes later to go into the holotropic breath work. And I'm fucking stoned at this point, like I'm very high. And then going into this deep breath, within 20 minutes, dude, I was crying with laughter. Like I have never laughed before. Like I was a child. Like the kind of laughter where you're trying to breathe again, like because your belly hurts and the tears are rolling down and gravity doesn't exist. And I'm just blissing out with Santa Maria. And then it occurs to me, like that's the power of the medicine, that's the power of cannabis, that's the power of Santa Maria. And it just gave me a whole reset for like, and a reverence for this sacred plant medicine. It's like, fuck, it's not just weed. Like it's so much more than that. And that really helped. That was a big catalyst for like changing my relationship with marijuana. And now when I do smoke, I make more of a ceremony out of it. Like you wouldn't just chow mushrooms or drink ayahuasca, or you
actually make it sacred.
You make it sacred with the ceremony, and you do, and this is why it worked really nicely with my friends when I was younger, a few years ago, because we would make a ceremony out of it. Whether that would, and the ceremony would involve playing Call of Duty and ordering pizza and listening to music and just joking and telling each other jokes and laughing around. But the whole thing was like a container where we were journeying together with cannabis. But I also think like my personal experience with cannabis is that it's really psychoactive. I don't know if I'm having the same experience as other people. I find it can be very, very hallucinogenic almost. Like I get visuals and I go on a deep journey.
It's very powerful. It's so like over or underrated because it's so widely used, but it's one of the more powerful plants I found. Like people are scared to microdose, but I'm like, that marijuana you're smoking is a lot more potent than a mushroom microdose or something. It's a really powerful plant.
And if you're listening to this and you're like, I smoke weed and I want to maybe think about bringing more of a ceremony into it, or at least just like respecting it, go into some breath work. Like take a couple of, like do the whole roll the joint or whatever the situation is, just go easy on smoking, and create a safe space, put some cool music on, like nothing like hectic, no psytrance, and something that will create the atmosphere for like having a journey and being like it's a ceremony. And then just go into some nice deep breathing in a meditation. And if you're familiar with breathwork already and you want to do some like a few rounds of sort of Wim Hof style breathing and some breath holds. The breath holds, I've had like DMT experiences with cannabis and breath before. It's epic.
Literally, yes. Yeah. No, it is really powerful. Breathwork is one of the key things that have changed my life. And it was probably about a year and a half ago. We did 2 of the holotropic breathwork like ceremony things where there was about 10 of us. Also loud music and 2 hours, and like he guides you but I'd done recreational psychedelics when I was younger, but I'd never really gone into like a ceremony space. And just with the breathwork, it was the first time I understood energy to be a real thing, and feeling love and just feeling like I was like, what just happened in that? I didn't take anything, but I had this experience. And subsequently listen to people like Wim Hof and that, and then just now for me, if I don't do breathwork in the morning first thing, like I notice my days, and then I'm like, shit, I haven't done breathwork for a day or two. Okay. And it's a beautiful way to start your day, and then set the tone for the day, get your body oxygenated, and then like go. And just like, it's such a beautiful thing to be conscious of your breath. And even throughout the day, cultivating moments where you just take a breath, check in, and it's powerful, man.
I did and I'm sure we do it automatically after a while, and that's the power of like creating these new neurological pathways over time with consistent breath work, but also consistent meditation, where quite often meditation is like when you do meditation, teachers encourage you to like be with the breath, feel the breath moving in and out of the nose, feel the belly rising, and it's really just bringing all of your focus and attention onto yourself, onto the body, and checking in with the body. And that's when you practice that over time, you develop the neurological pathways to automatically just go just throughout the day. Sure. And also not worry too much about what other people might think of you going okay, and also using the voice as well. I find like if I'm feeling anxious, to check in with my breath, and sometimes it will be quite shallow, and so I can bring some conscious breathing in and just do some nice deep nose breathing into the belly. Yeah. And then on the out breath, also just sigh and go and that extra voice is like
it's so powerful.
Sometimes when there's like an angsty kind of room that I've moved into, and I can feel everybody's energy, I'll just sit and do 2 or 3 of those, and it can almost clear the room a little bit. I find it like has an impact on the people around me as well. And then when I'm around other empathic people, and they're feeling my anxiety, calming that down helps them calm down, and we will just come into a bit more deep presence.
That's beautiful.
All through breath, man. Yeah. It's epic. And this is totally new to me. I'm not a fucking expert on this at all. I'm just taking these like things that I'm learning and implementing them into my practical day-to-day stuff. So when someone cuts me up in the traffic, which in Cape Town is often, and it's like someone, like a taxi does a mad overtaking maneuver and then pulls over right in front of me. There's like previous Ben would have reacted to that, and it would have been triggering. And it doesn't mean to say I don't experience the trigger, it's just I notice the trigger.
Notice the triggers,
and then I breathe into it, and I'm like, that ain't worth my energy. And not like, fuck you, you're not worth it, but just like, I love you, you're doing your thing.
You're lost in your story, it's okay.
Or like, taxis are taxiing, right? It's how Cape Town operates.
And then it's like, if you had to put yourself in their shoes, would you do anything different? Probably not. So
exactly,
it is what it is.
There's that ego that's like should and shouldn'ting, shoulding on people. As my teacher Andrew, one of my teachers, says, like, don't should on me, like, and don't should on yourself either. Like, I should have done this. I like to change. He taught me to change the language there and change should to could. Like, I could have done that. So you're recognizing and taking responsibility for the choice that you made, consciously or unconsciously, saying, I should have done this. No, you could have done something different, but you chose not to. And so you're taking responsibility for that and not blaming anybody, and you're letting go of the fact that you can't change the past. And then from there, you're empowering yourself to make a different choice next time.
for sure. I think we both admire Aubrey Marcus, and one of the things I learned from
Yes.
him was, and he talks about it often, is in his book as well. He talks about there's a study done, a Japanese study, on 6 conscious breaths, and just taking 6 deep conscious breaths. Okay. Hey.
Apollo needs to take 6 conscious breaths right now.
Apollo constantly needs to take conscious breaths. We'll take a quick break, bro, and then we'll finish this off.
Rad.
So we're back from a break, and yeah, man, where were we? Breathwork. Yeah, that study I was mentioning. So 6 deep conscious breaths has been proven to lower your blood pressure and really calm you down, and it's phenomenal. Just 6 breaths, and it's like it really works.
Fuck, it's amazing. Isn't it? It's so simple.
So simple.
Like, why aren't we taught this at school?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we taught to self-soothe and regulate our nervous systems?
And I also wanted to mention, I don't want to go into that whole conversation, but radical responsibility, like responsibility for yourself and making your own decisions. And I think that's so much of what I can sense from you as well, while you're speaking up, is what's going on in the world at the moment. It's like nobody should have the right to tell you what to do, how to do it, and how to live, and restriction of personal freedoms. Yeah. That's crazy. People need to take responsibility for themselves and look after themselves. And I think that's the crux of it. It's like, do you. Don't impose your will on others. Don't expect others to be a certain way. It's been quite frustrating. It's been triggering for me to try and look out there and be like, okay, that's happening, and not get triggered and be like, fuck you, I'm not doing that. I'm not complying with that.
But also fuck you, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, but for sure.
Because and I think there needs to be more of that, because we're that's what's sort of coming online for me right now, is standing up for what I believe in. I'm becoming more and more a sovereign being.
Yes,
exactly. I'm thinking for myself more and more. And that doesn't mean to say I'm totally autonomous now. There's certainly programming that's still running, and subconscious programming that I'm unaware of, that I'm still operating from, I'm sure, on many levels. But I'm aware of myself, and many of us are. And there's more and more and more of us coming online. Yeah. And we're not shaming ourselves or other people for being caught in a program or in some kind of fear matrix or conditioning like that, because it's addictive. Firstly, being addicted to chaos is super real. Many people are in that addiction. But addiction is also, for me and my experience with talking to addiction with cannabis, that anxiety feeling, I was like, well, this is actually quite familiar to me because I've spent my whole life feeling anxious. So it's hard to move away from something that's familiar, even if it's not good for you. And I think there's this sort of mass hypnosis,
mass psychosis,
that's happening. Exactly. And not as an observation, not a judgment. And that's a super important thing. But I mean, we can speak to this on the internet, and heaven forbid you go on Twitter and start speaking about it.
Yeah, I don't even have Twitter. I can't even imagine. I heard it's just a toxic,
it's gnarly.
It's so polarizing what's going on. But for me, it's the strangest thing. It's like this upside down world we're living in. And for me, the more I become sovereign and get to know myself, and I've never felt more clearly in my life, the more I get that, the more I suppose, if you're stuck in the fear matrix and you're really lost in that story, people like us would appear crazy to them, but
we are crazy.
We are crazy, but I've never felt more sane. But I know that I appear crazy to everybody else. And I'm like, I'm not taking that. I'm not wearing that. I'm not wearing a mask all day. This is ridiculous.
Dude, it's just avalanches of irony. Left, right, and center.
Yes.
It's frightening because we kind of are in the minority. But I also believe that there's a lot more of us than they make out.
I'm optimistic.
Yeah, totally. I think there's way more. I don't think the controlled information that we are exposed to would ever let on quite how many people are waking up. Look at the news. Any mainstream news outlet, they're not covering the tens of millions of people who are marching in the streets for their basic human freedoms. And let's not go down the comparative route of what's free now compared to, and what's the difference between freedom and liberty. But like, if we don't start using our voice and coming online, like
Yeah.
getting our voices online and speaking to things, even
Yeah.
though we might not be experts in them,
Yeah.
because right now it's hard. I've been trying to have conversations on the internet about emotionally triggering topics like vaccines, like mandates, like mask mandates, like vaccine passports and things like that. But because it's such a polarized, the media are creating a polarization, so it's us versus them. And as soon as you start trying to have an adult conversation from a calm place, you're going to receive feedback from someone who is not in a calm place,
Yeah.
who is actually just, like it or lump it, a conduit for the fear frequencies that they've received. And if you're in a calm space and being like, I don't think there's anything for me to be scared about. People who are really fearing for their lives because they've received all the information and they've attuned themselves to it and taken it on board as fact, someone who's calm is a threat to them because you're not, how are you so different to me?
Yeah.
Like, you must not know the things that I know. And the reality is it's completely on its head. It's like, more likely you don't know the things I know.
Yes.
And that's, again, not from a judgmental point of view. Everybody's perfectly on their perfect journey.
Yeah.
But at some point, it's like, I think in the new age spiritual world, it can all be a little bit love and light and a little bit like, oh, everything's unfolding in perfection. And I'm just going to meditate and love the world. And there's power to that for sure. But sometimes you've got to stand up and say, it's a fuck no from me, actually, thank you. And I'm actually also going to call you out on this bullshit and use my voice because I trust what my internal guidance system is telling me.
For sure.
You know? And that's hard these days because
so fucking hard.
the opposite end of the spectrum is like deeply committed to not wanting to even understand the other side. And I came across this really interesting thing the other day. There's a guy called Preston Smiles. I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, but he's like a life coach, spiritual dude.
Okay.
And he was talking about his teacher teaching him about the drama triangle.
Okay.
And it's like as far as I'm aware, it's like how you create a good film, basically, how you create a good story.
Okay.
And the drama triangle is like the hero, the victim, and the villain. And that's how you make a good story. And so there's this drama story, and people are putting themselves in one of those three categories in the story that's being sort of imposed on us. This narrative, this mainstream narrative about what's really going on in the world. And then they'll hook you into their drama triangle. And so if you've been living on an island, you don't even know what's going on in terms of the pandemic. You're happy as Larry.
Yes.
And then somebody suddenly turns up at the island and they're wearing masks and gloves and you're like, what the fuck's going on? They're like, now you're in our drama triangle and we're the hero of yours. Or you're dangerous because you're not wearing a mask. And so now you're the villain and I'm the victim. And the heroes up there are telling us that we need to wash our hands and and sanitize and do all these things. And so it's like, I don't want to participate in your drama triangle story, actually. I'm quite happy with a calm nervous system.
Yeah.
Because also, if there is danger, I want to be calm for it. So I can see all of my choices from being in a state of deep presence.
Yeah.
And when we start to unpack it like that and see it, again, not from a judgmental point of view, it's really important to not judge people and say, like, I'm better than you because I'm more aware of myself than you or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the spiritual ego coming in. But to observe it and not be afraid to speak to it and call it out.
100%. I think you touched on a good point there, and something that I also struggled because, not struggled with, but sometimes you've got to call out the bullshit. And it's like you can go down the spiritual path and there's so, like, everybody is a light worker these days, which is great, but there's also, people are getting lost in that identity. And now it's a case of, I literally had somebody tell me that light workers that she knows says, you can take the vaccine, it's fine, you can protect yourself with a white light. And I'm like, no. That's, if you're giving advice to people like in that front, that's terrible advice.
Right.
Then you got to call it out and be like, no, that's absolute bullshit. Even no matter how spiritual you are, some of these things you got to call them out for what they are, and you know it does become confrontational because you're giving out views that automatically are getting this opposition. But it's a tricky one to navigate. But my thing is, what I realized last year was I've looked into history and I've read a couple of history books, and when you understand what happened in history, you start to see what's happening now is petrifying. It's like the mandates and whatnot. Once you start, you know, categorizing people into groups and this and that, like that always leads to disaster.
Yeah.
And it's that thing. It's just like we need to stand up and speak about things that are a danger to society, because in the past it's led to over 100 million people dying in the 20th century. Is these ideas, this separation, mandates, passports, oh, you guys are less worthy than us, you're not vaccinated, or you are, or you the spreading disease, and now you vermin. That kind of thinking can get us into really dark places. And it's speaking, like you say, speaking up about it is important, and I think we need to create awareness around it.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily to come from a place of like, I'm here to change your mind for you. It's like, well, some people, it's not most people, I'd even say, in our lifetime, most people, it's not in their journey to necessarily have like a spiritual awakening. Or to take a step back and see things for how they really are. And it's certainly not on us to say whether that should or shouldn't be like that. Or that's right or wrong.
So that's where I've struggled now. Like I've gotten to the point where I'm trying to dissociate myself from getting stuck in that drama and being like, you know, it is what it is. Everybody's having their experience. But then where do you finding that balance? I found is.
And I think a good direction for our energy is to do exactly this. And to be aware also that we are also in a bubble, like in a little spiritual bubble, and to support each other and find your community, like find your tribe. If you're out and you're listening to this right now and it's like, all of my friends are actually freaking out at me because I'm taking a minute to decide whether I want to get the vaccine or not, and suddenly like I'm being pointed at and being told and being hooked into their drama triangle, being told you're dangerous. I've had messages from people on Instagram saying this rhetoric that you're speaking to about and also labeling me an anti-vaxxer, of course. It's like polarizing language. It's like, if you're not this, then you're that. It's like, we're talking about health here. There's a bunch of nuance, like infinite nuance, in fact. But a lot of people are like freaking out because all of their friends are like getting their selfies with the vaccine stickers and stuff. And they're like, did my part for humanity. And it's like, that's part of your journey. I don't feel like it's part of mine. And there's something in here that's like, fuck. There's like a red flag. There's an alarm going, and it's like, it's frightening because it's dividing people, and that's kind of the whole idea of it. If the narrative was like, we have this vaccine, if you feel we don't know like if it's going to even be helpful or not. We think it is. Here's all the science to say it is, but here's also all the science to say it's not. And so it's kind of up to you. And we would never want to impose ourselves or coerce you and take away your God-given free will right to choose what goes into your body or not. Then I'd be like, okay, cool. And it probably wouldn't separate families quite so much, or friendship groups, or whole nations. But this ain't about health. It's not about the vaccine. It's not about like saving lives. It's about dividing people again on another issue, so that we can continue bickering against each other and do another 100 years of this fuck show of a system that is like incredibly oppressive and not actually working out for anybody. 100%. So as soon as we all just put the anti-vax, like polarizing language down and actually have a conversation and say, okay, well, what do you want? What do you want in life? Well, fundamentally, love. Like, I want to feel loved. I don't want to feel fear all the time. I want to be calm. I want to just be free to, like, do my job and earn my money and have a family. And I want health as well. I want good health. It's like, okay, we want health. Let's talk about health. What are the key fundamentals of health? What are the pillars of health? Like, are we continuing actually to agree to participate in a system that isn't interested in our health or our well-being at all. Nobody's talking about like getting more sleep, like switching to organic food. It's like, well, not everybody can afford organic food. Why not? Let's go down that route. Why are we the only species that has to pay rent to be here? Like, food grows in the ground. Like, water is free. Like, soon we're going to be paying for clean air. It's like just the commodification of everything should raise a few red flags of the current system that we're operating under. And I'm not saying like do away with economy or capitalism. I'm just saying like the system's, I'm not going to say it's broken. I'm going to say it's working perfectly well to do the job that it was designed to do. And that doesn't involve the masses thriving. It involves us barely surviving. And I don't know about you, but I want to see some fucking change.
Yeah, 100%. And just the conversation on health, like you said, it's such a nuanced, like it's there's so many levels to health. There's so many, you could talk for days on health. I mean, so you can't put it into one category. There's it's endless conversations.
And what you need is not what I need.
Exactly.
And what I need is not what you need.
100%.
You can't just black or white it. Like, it's mad.
But like you said, here's the science on this side, here's the science on this side. You look at the facts, you decide for yourself and your health what's best. And like, that's it. That would, not this polarizing, like you said, divide and conquer. It's trying to not feed into that system. That's what I've struggled with. But I'm definitely navigating it a bit better. But I'm optimistic. I'm seeing a lot of more people speaking up, a lot more people, as much as there's the backlash, it's like, you know what, there's so many more people who are speaking up and saying things and are waking up to a bit more what's going on. Realizing that, yes, there's something going on, but there's a much bigger picture, and once you start to question certain things and come to your own realizations. Before I forget, I want to, before we end off this podcast, I really want to...
Does it have to end?
No,
Let's just keep going, right? We should just do this live next time and just go for 12 hours.
We must do a live session. I think so. I've never done a live, so I'd love to.
I did my first one last night.
Okay. A live podcast. Okay.
Nerve-wracking.
Sure, I can imagine.
I was going into breath often. I was like...
I'd be a nervous wreck, but I think I like pushing the comfort zones. It's quite exhilarating, and it's like it's quite nice.
It's a growth edge.
It really is. The otter codes, the downloads, the little moment you had. I have been in Chicago, and I've heard about the otters. I haven't seen them. I know you said you had quite a cool moment with them the other evening. Like, what happened there?
So otters, there's a family of otters in the reserve just here, and like you've heard of them. I didn't know. I've only been here for a couple of months. But I explained this story in great depth on a podcast. The short version is like I went for a swim at sunset, and it was like raining and miserable, and I kind of didn't want to do it, but I had just a bit of a shit day, and I was like, hard reset in the ocean is what I need. And sort of trundling down there, and I got to the boardwalk, and I could hear this rustling in the reeds, and there's a river that goes through down onto the beach from the mountains, and I was like, fuck, there's someone's dog is like stuck in the reeds, like trying to get out, and I'm gonna have to wade across the river and rescue a fucking dog. And here for it, I'm down for it. Like,
it'll probably be Apollo.
Shame. It wouldn't surprise me. And then I looked a little bit closer, and out of this little gap in the reeds, this otter's head popped out and like checked me out. I was like, hey. And immediately my day completely switched on a dime, like, and I had this tingling up my spine. It was almost like when MDMA or mushrooms start coming on, and you're like, whoa, here we go. It was like that kind of feeling, like a raise of my vibration. And I just sat cross-legged on the boardwalk watching these otters. And like 3 more of them popped their heads out, and they were big. They were like almost the size of Apollo. They were like pretty big doggos, like medium doggos. And sea doggos, I suppose. Oh, that's a seal, isn't it? A seal is a sea puppy. But these otters, I'd spent the day sort of pondering. Everybody's talking about freedom, like our freedom's being taken away. Like, what does freedom even mean? Like, and so I was that was on my mind. And then I felt like I got like for want of a better word, like a download, or more like I remembered something that was activated in me by this current situation where I just immersed myself in this natural environment where the river is flowing and the reeds are like moving back and forth, and these otters are checking me out, and the connection between the otters, like us watching each other, kind of hooked me into that space for me to completely just get out of my mind and feel into what it would be like to be part of nature. And then I was like, fuck, I am part of nature. I'm remembering that, the otters are ottering, and the river is flowing, and the reeds are reading, and the clouds are going by, and the rain's coming down, and it's all just happening. It's the big happening. It's the mystery, right? How it's all happening. And you can go in and dissect and find the infinite, incredible cellular intelligence and all the mitochondria things that are happening, trillions of activities. It's all like a vibration, literally a vibration of a buzzing of life that's all happening synchronistically with itself, in symbiosis rather. And the otter doesn't think, I don't want to otter today. Like, it just gets on with it. And maybe it's a blessing to not have as much self-awareness. Or maybe they do, and they're just like, oh, those fucking crazy humans are like worrying
lost
about...
in their stories.
They're lost in that illusion of self.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they are literally a part of nature that's just kind of where we've separated ourselves from nature. And I just had this like realization, like to feel calm and comfortable in one's environment is freedom. Like and that maybe you're like locked in a house, but if you're calm and comfortable, and your perception of what's happening to you is like, oh, that's out of my control. It's like I refer to also Nelson Mandela in doing his prison sentence on Robben Island.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book, an incredible book, and he was friends with all the guards, and he came out the embodiment of love.
Yeah.
And that's not what's supposed to happen in prison. It's supposed to break your mind down and you lose your shit, and then you feel like life's not worth living. So what he couldn't control what was happening to him, but he could maintain control, or I prefer the word choice over control. He was choosing, he had awareness, he had a choice of his perception of what was happening. So he didn't lose his shit. And so now, like, bringing that back into the freedom and nature piece, it's like, freedom is calm. Freedom is not anxiety. Freedom is to have a calm nervous system. Freedom is to have the capacity to just go, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and if I'm not, maybe I can move. If I can't, then I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. And that's healing in itself, and that's for me really like a good way of self-soothing myself. And moving to Scarborough actually has been such a huge part of developing, or actually just getting used to having a calm nervous system. Running on anxiety my whole life. When my alarm went off at 6 a.m, 5 a.m. every morning when I was a teenager, and I had to go training on a freezing cold river, anxiety, and talk about race day anxiety. Fuck, dude. And now if I get a feeling of that in the morning, I'm like, meditate or breathe, or just remind myself that I don't have anything to be anxious about. And then I remember, I'm like, wow, I used to wake up every single day and just be anxious. That, fuck, I've got to nail my training, because if I don't nail my training, then I'm going to fuck up the month, and then I'm going to fuck up the season. And then on a subconscious level, nobody will love me because I won't win the races. And I won't make my parents proud. And I won't make my country proud, and then I won't be a functioning, useful member of society, and then there's no point in me existing. All of that happens subconsciously and then it makes my body reacts to that. So mindfulness is bringing awareness to the thoughts that we're having, and then bringing more awareness into the body about how our physical body and our nervous system is responding to those thoughts, and then saying, okay, well, are those thoughts true? And I'm not an expert on how to have a mindfulness practice. But that's kind of the idea of it. It's why people get into it and they're like, oh, fuck, why don't they teach this at school? Yeah. And it's like, well, because they don't want you to feel free and calm. They want you to be on the edge the whole time thinking you're not enough unless you earn more money and buy more shit and have more like power, but not power as in like the power of being calm in any given situation, which is true power, but like this dominating trauma response power really, which is like, I need to dominate you, I need to dominate the planet, I need to extract resources and take things, that kind of power, which is like this distorted power that we're kind of that paradigm that we're operating from at the moment.
100%.
So yeah, otter codes, bro.
Beautiful. It's so kid, man. Wow. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Have you?
No, I haven't read that.
It's a small little book. It's absolutely profound.
One with a little bird on about
little bird
the
on
Holocaust.
It. Yes, on the it's Viktor Frankl was in the concentration camps, and he speaks
to
the same idea as Nelson Mandela. But when you read his account and how, at the end of the day, nobody can take away your freedom, no matter what situation you're in. It's just, it's a beautiful, beautiful read. So definitely recommend that as well. But thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Thanks for listening.
That was beautiful, man. So many things I want to touch on, but I think we're gonna have to end this off. Tara's gonna beat me. She needs to do a thing here and make a noise. Please can we sit down and do another one?
Absolutely.
Because there's so many other things I wanted to touch on, but...
No, dude, I just want to also say, like, I'm super grateful for you creating this podcast and creating a space to have these kinds of conversations. And we will never know, and we can never know the kind of positive impact that you'll be having in creating this kind of space, and the kind of activations or seeds that are being planted in the people who are listening to this, not necessarily this conversation specifically, but all of them. And I also want to say thank you so much for your microdosing. I've been having such incredible experiences with the microdosing protocol that you've been blessing me with, and Thank you so much for that.
It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, that's another topic as well.
That's a whole other topic. That's going to segue into the next one. Definitely
the next one. That's something that's changed my life. And I was like, you know what? If I can, and it really has helped people. And it's a beautiful medicine if used the right way. And I'm trying to shift the bad perception of all of that and try and speak more about it. And I think it is happening.
You're doing it. You're doing
thanks,
it.
Man.
Yeah, man.
And likewise. So on the next one. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, that's a wrap.